Hi, hello, vanakkam, and welcome back to yet another episode on Little's Law YouTube channel. So far in our videos, we were seeing about the different phases of performance testing. We started with identifying the test environment, and then we have moved to identifying the performance metrics. In phase 3, we completed the planning and the designing of the performance test, and in phase 4 we are we have did the configuration of the test environment, and in phase 5 we were working on the script. We have completed all these scripts from scenario 1 to 8, and then in phase 6 today we are going to see about how to run a load test in JMeter. And before that, I welcome you all to Little's Law YouTube channel. Please do subscribe to our channel if you have not subscribed yet. Like, comment your questions and feedbacks in the comments section. So, when talking about running a load test, before that, we will have to identify the user load. So let's check what is the user load that we have planned, and that has to be completed during the performance planning phase, and we have already did that. So for the script 1 we have decided 10 users, and for scenario 2 we did 10 users. So same way we have decided a total of 300 users for this test. Okay, so it has to be 300, and we have decided, okay, we have built it here. So now we will set this user load to the thread group. For that, let me just shrink it down. So here we have got the user load. So today we are going to see, so this load test is not going to end today. We are going to try this load test with different set of thread groups. So today we are going to see how are we going to do this with the ultimate thread group, because this is the most common thread group which I normally use for performance testing. But other than this, we have many other thread groups, something like the open model thread group, the normal thread group, the arrivals thread group, the concurrency thread group, the freeform arrivals thread group, the stepping thread group, then the ultimate, the setup thread group, and tear down thread group. So today we will see about how are we going to use the ultimate thread group for this load test, and we will see how to design the load test as part of this particular video and this testing. So as we saw here, so the script 1 should have 30 users. So let's go to the scenario 1, and the first one is going to be 30 users. So before that, let's see what are all these schedules talk about. Say for example, we have the start threads count, we have the initial delays, we have startup time, we have whole load, and we have shutdown. So what does this start thread count talks about, or what does this initial delay? So this initial delay we see here is the one, or is the that tells us the amount of time in seconds. It does not show in milliseconds or in minutes. It does show in seconds, and it tells us the amount of time to delay the start of the first thread in the test. And then we have the startup time, which tells us the amount of time, again in seconds, and which it takes to start all the threads in the test. And then we have the whole load for second, which is the amount of time to keep the load running after all the threads have started. So this is basically the duration for which the load is maintained at a constant level. Say for example, this is going to be the steady state. And then finally we have the shutdown time, which is the amount of time which allows for gracefully shutting down all the threads at the end of the test. So which in performance testing point of view, so this is going to be the ramp up, the whole load is a steady state, and then the shutdown time is going to be the ramp down. Yes, you're right. And this is going to be the user load, the total amount of load that we are going to use for this particular test. So before we move on to set up this ultimate thread group, I would like to give you a little more detail that would really help you while planning for this load test using the ultimate thread group. So when talking about the ultimate thread group, it has few advantages. So when talking about the advantages, this ultimate thread group allows, so which is basically a flexible thread scheduling thread group. So this allows us to configure the thread scheduling in a flexible way, which can be useful for simulating a realistic user behavior. Say, for example, you can set up a multiple. So for example, like you can set up a user count of 100 users, and then the initial delays can be 5 seconds, and then you can see here you can set up the ramp up seconds for 30 seconds, and then it slowly ramps up the user, and then it has a steady state, and finally it ramps down based on the time that we give here. In case if we want to slowly ramp down, then we can make the seconds to be 100, and in this way we can, so it actually gives us a lot of flexibility, and in fact we can even add another row which helps us to make use of the flexibility of how well we can use or how well we can increase or decrease the users. So for example, I can just change the time here, and then again it's going to be for 60 seconds. Let me just, okay, so this actually gives us a clear picture of how we can improve or add the users to the thread group. And then the second advantage, which is the dynamic thread control. So when it comes to dynamic thread control, so by using this ultimate thread group, we can dynamically adjust the number of threads during a test, which can help us to identify the performance bottleneck under different load conditions. Say for example, we can increase or decrease dynamically using this particular ultimate thread group. This is the second advantage. And when coming to the third advantage, which is the configuring of load profile, we can easily configure the load profile of our test using the ultimate thread group. And how can we do that? So we can do that by setting the ramp up time, the steady state, and then the shutdown time. So we can easily configure the load profile using the three setup metrics, which is the ramp up, steady state, and then the ramp down, which is the shutdown time. And then the final advantage, which is the easy to use. So this has a very simple and intuitive interface, which makes it easy for us. I mean, even for beginners, they can easily learn it. So this clearly shows us at like how much time or at what time the users are going to add, and what time they're going to ramp up, and what time are they going to be in the steady state, and then when will they do their ramp down. So in this way, it's very easy and the interface is very simple. So when talking about the disadvantages, so anything that comes with advantage will have its own disadvantage. So the first disadvantage is this ultimate thread group is resource intensive, especially when running large tests with a high number of threads. If, for example, if you are running a load test more than 500 or 700 users or even 1000 users, so this can impact the performance of the JMeter engine and the host system. And so in fact there is another way to mitigate it. In fact, we can run this test using it when we are running it through a non-GUI mode. We can in fact mitigate it, but still this is quite resource intensive due to its setup and the design. And then when it comes to the second disadvantage, it has a steep learning curve, which is it has many configuration options, which makes it difficult to learn and use effectively without a good understanding of load testing concepts. In case if you want to make some settings, like for example, you are keep on adding users, this, that, and this might create a confusion. So it is always in the same way it's simple, but when you try to add more complexity, it's quite difficult to control. So it needs a steep learning curve to handle this particular thread group. So then the third disadvantage, which is the limited reporting options. So the ultimate thread group provides limited reporting options compared to other JMeter thread groups, which can make it harder to analyze and interpret the test results, which we will see at the end of the test. And then when it comes to the suitability for all test scenarios, so the ultimate thread group is not suitable for all test scenarios, especially those that require complex load patterns or specialized thread scheduling. And that is why we are going to try all the thread groups in our daily load test examples. So this is very advantageous one, or this is very suitable for those who want to do a load test with a pre-planned ramp up, steady state, and ramp down time. So with that, so this is how I'm going to plan my test. So the thread count is going to be 100. So in fact, I'm just going to show you. I'll not run with this load test. This is just for you to give you a demo on how does it work. So the thread count is going to be 100 for this. So it's going to be 30, and then for the next, and then this is how we can set up. So why do we need to have an initial delay? So the main reason to have the initial delay is when we want to find the CPU or the memory resource utilization metrics, when we do not have any time before, say for example, you start to monitor your CPU and the memory and the other resources. So when you give some initial delay, say for example some 5 minutes or so, you can use that particular metrics or that particular values of CPU and memory to compare it with the CPU utilization, memory utilization during the test. So 5 minutes to 10 minutes and 5 minutes to 10 minutes before and after the test is always good for you to analyze how does the actual CPU resources is working and how does it work when it comes with the load. So that is why this initial delay in seconds works. So let us set it up for 300 seconds. So that is a normal setup I give. And then when it comes to startup seconds, in fact I have 30 users, so I normally keep it like 10 users for every 5 seconds or so, or it depends on, so the total or the maximum time which I keep it is like 6 minutes. So in that case I can keep it up. 6 minutes is 180 seconds, and then the whole time is going to be, when it comes to seconds, it is going to be 3600 seconds, which is going to be 1 hour, and then the shutdown time is going to be another 180. So which in turn will be, so my test will be running for 1 hour and 11 minutes. So the same way, let's set for other thread groups, and when it comes to the second thread group, it's going to be again 30. So let's use the same one, 30, 300. So it's going to be 30, and the initial delay is going to be, sorry, this is going to be 30 users, and then the initial delay is going to be 300, yes, just 5 minutes, and then the startup time is going to be 180, 3600, it's going to be 180, 3600, and then another 180 or so. So which in turn will end the test at 1 hour 11 minutes again. And then when it comes to shopping reptiles, it is going to be 15. So let's set it up. So it's going to be 15. The initial delay is going to be the same for every script, and then the startup time is going to be 180. The whole time is going to be for 1 hour, and then again the shutdown time is going to be 180. So here you can see there will be a quite change because the amount of users that we have used is quite less, so the users will ramp up very quick, or it might take a little time because here we will have to ramp up 30 users in 180 seconds, and here we have to ramp up 15 users in 180 seconds, so that makes a quite difference. And then when it comes to shopping cats, it's going to be again 15, 15, 15, 15. So the next three is going to be 15. So let's just copy this one here in this notepad, so that will be easy for us to complete it. 15, then 300, 180, 3600, and 180. So in this way we can easily do it. So it's going to be 15, 300, startup time is going to be 6 minutes, the whole time is going to be 3600, then again it's going to be 180. The same way for the next shopping birds, it's the same, 15, 300, just 5 minutes, 180, 3600, and finally it's 180. And what about the add to cart? So let's check how much we have for the, we plan for the add to cart. So the last two, it's going to be again another 15. So let's just have it another 150. Initial delay is going to be 300. Startup time is going to be 180, 3600, then the 180. Then when it comes to I'm really sorry, so the initial delay, okay, so the startup time is going to be 360. If it is 6 minutes, I'm really sorry. So this is going to be 360 for all the scripts because that makes 6 minutes. I'm really sorry for that mistake. 360 is going to be 6 minutes. And in fact, even you keep the showdown time, the ramp down time is going to be 180, but anyways the test will complete once it completes its execution. So again it's going to be 360, and then they log in log out, so it's going to be 120 users. So let's just set up 120 users, and then the initial delay is going to be initial delays is going to be 300, which is 5 minutes, and then the startup is here, then 2600, and then I'm going to just set up 180 as the ramp down. So here we can see it nearly takes a little bit of time to complete the ramp up and ramp down since we have increased the time, so it moved from 111 to 114. And here you can see it, I mean, like we could see a lot of users will be ramping up in this particular script, and there'll be huge load when it comes to that particular script. And then the last one is going to be the search, which is with 60 users. Then the initial delay is going to be 300, 360, 600, finally 180. So yes, so we have set up with all these settings, and then once we are done with our setup, we can start our load test. So I think I have not missed anything else. So now I have reduced the user load for according to my application, but still it is up to you to set up the users depending on your performance test plan. And after that, I am having just the view results tree. In fact, let me disable this for a moment, because having this view results tree will in fact take a lot of the resources. And then I'm just having the summary report, and then the active threads over time, and then the bytes throughput over time. And in fact, I would never recommend you to run this test in a GUI mode. I always recommend you to run all the tests in a non-GUI mode, and in fact that's the best practice. I'm just showing this to you so that you can understand how does it work. Okay, so before that, let me start the test. So here we are in the test plan. Let me save the test, and then let me click on the start button and overwrite existing file, and let's wait for a few more seconds until we get the users to start. So by the time we will see about the thread groups, the graphs which I have added. So here we started to see the users starting to ramp up, and by the time, let's see what is this particular active thread groups over time graph. So this is a performance visualization chart in JMeter that shows the number of active threads in a test plan over time. So here we can see that number of users in a test plan over time, but this graph plots the number of active threads on the y-axis and the elapsed time. So this is the x-axis here on the bottom, and then the y-axis on the left side. And this graph is useful for understanding how the load is distributed over time during the load test. In fact, it allows us to monitor the number of active threads in real time, which helps us to identify the performance bottlenecks, server capacity limits, and any other performance issues that impacts the performance of our application or website. And when it comes to the providing the data, so it provides a high level view of the test plan execution and helps to identify the patterns and trends in the test results. See, for example, if we can use this graph to determine if the load is ramping up too quickly, and if there are any spikes or drops in the thread activity, or if there are any consistent patterns or thread behavior. And then when it comes to the the other one. So is that how advantageous? So this is a very valuable tool for load testing and provides insights into the performance of our application under different load conditions, and it is a key tool to monitor during a test to ensure that our performance, the application is performing optimally. So in fact there are different settings we can try here. So in fact we can see the rows, we can even change the colors if we want to set it up. And then when it comes to the settings, so we have detailed display on one row per sampler or aggregated display, which will show all the users. So here we can see, we could see that total number of users here, the total number of users around 17. So in this way we can see how many now users were executing during this part of time, or else in case if we want to display that in a single in a separate one, so we can use this as a detail. So I normally prefer using the aggregated display. And when it comes to the bytes throughput, so here we can see the bytes throughput over time. So this is another most useful graph, which is actually another performance visualization chart in JMeter that shows the amount of data transferred by a test plan over time. And in fact this graph plots the number of bytes on the y-axis. So here we can see on the y-axis the number of bytes, and then the elapsed time on the x-axis. And why are we using it? So this is useful for understanding how much data is being transferred by our application or website during the load test. It allows us to monitor the throughput in real time, which can help us to identify the performance bottlenecks or any other issues that impacts the performance of the application or the website. And in fact, again, this gives a high level view of the data transfer during the test plan execution and helps to identify the patterns and trends in the test results. Say for example, if we can actually use this graph to determine if the throughput is consistent or if there are any spikes or drops in the data transfer. We can also use this graph to monitor if the throughput is meeting our performance requirements. Overall, the bytes throughput over time graph is a valuable tool for load testing, and it provides insights into the performance of our application or the website under different load conditions. So we are going to use this in all of our test. So the test is completed, and let's see whether we have got any errors. I believe we should not have, but there is few errors in this particular script, so it might be due to the user load, and it's for the click confirm button, so which is part of the first scripts. So I believe this is an expected error since we are giving multiple hits to this particular server. So we might, there are chances where we might get errors. So in fact, if we would have enabled the view results tree, we could have easily identified that. But still, the overall summary report, so here we can see the summary report, and we are not going to analyze these results now. So we are going to analyze that in a separate video at the end. So for our next videos is going to be how to run different types of load testing or the performance testing, so something like the load test, the spike test, the endurance test, or the stress test. So until I meet you in our next video, it's bye bye from Vasan Shanmugam and Little's Law.